Well, welcome everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to our March Friday Focus webinar. Good to see you, Rob, Anjali, and others that may be joining here. Excited about our topic today. I've invited some key speakers today on the important topic of social and emotional learning and really supporting kids and families. And I think you're going to hear today some of the challenges that we're all facing in the field with getting the kids and families the support that they need around social and emotional learning so that they can get the most out of their educational setting and certainly feel safe and protected and all those things in school. You're going to hear today from multiple folks that are behind some of the work as one model and example in the field and how that came to be, what the services and supports are. That's one model. I'm sure there's other models out there of schools doing great work to support kids and families, but certainly wanted to highlight the good work going on and Mid-Prairie and Care Solace today with some key people as well that I think you'll appreciate today. So thanks for joining us and excited about our Friday focus here today. As always, these are also designed for some networking opportunities. So we'll get some contents, hopefully some new insights today on our social and emotional support for kids and families. When we're done with the formal presentations here that are brief today, we'll have some time at the end for questions and networking as well. So look forward to it. And thanks for joining us today. To kick things off, we have recovering, retired Superintendent Brian Schneider from
Mark Schneider.
Mark Schneider, I'm sorry.
You're fine, Brian.
I'm sorry. Hasn't changed the name in retirement, huh? To kick us off today with an introduction about some of the challenge he saw in the field, as well as how he got connected with Care Solace and some of the support that he saw. So, Mark, will you start us here in our webinar this afternoon?
Sure. Thanks, Trent. I appreciate being here and be able to share with you some of the things that at least were instituted at Mid-Prairie. As Trent said, I retired in July after 41-year career as an educator. 21 of those years was as a superintendent at Mid-Prairie. And obviously, as you know, through the years, mental health, brain health, mental fitness has been more of an issue with students, and especially with the pandemic. And I'll be honest, at Mid-Prairie, we thought we were doing everything, that we could. We had a counselor in each classroom. We had a good relationship with our AEA. We even had a MOU with an outside therapy company and provided space in our schools to provide counseling services. And I was in my office sitting in June feeling pretty good about the way we were serving kids, at least to the best of our ability, and didn't think there was anything else we could do. Well, I received a call from a representative from a company called Care Solace. They were in 30 states. They wanted to expand into Iowa. And because his wife knew my youngest sister, he thought, hey, Mid-Prairie was a perfect place to stop. So he called me up. And I'll be honest, on the telephone call, I had a lot of misconceptions about what I thought Care Solace was. And I knew I was retiring anyway, but I thought, because I know his wife's family, I'll humor him. He can give me a demonstration. I'll politely turn him down and we'll go on with it. Well, so he set up a demonstration. He demonstrated Care Solace's services, and I was blown away because I've never seen anything like this before. And so, I told him, hey, this really looks good. If I was staying, I'd be investigating this more, but I'm retiring. I'll turn the information over to the superintendent that's following me, who is Brian Stone, and the counselors, and good luck to you. Well, once he found out I was retiring, he said, hey, Care Solace hires advisors. And would you consider being an advisor for the company? And I said, well, I want to talk to the CEO, and the CEO is based out of California, where this started. And so we set up a video chat, and my values and beliefs seemed to align with his and also with the company. So I'm doing something now that I never thought I'd doing. I was going to retire and just, go to my farm and raise goats and horses and be done with all of this. But mental health is something that's very near and dear to my heart, not just professionally, but personally. My grandmother took her own life. I have a sibling that struggled with mental health issues all her life, and it's affected her and her family. And so I became an advisor. And I don't want this to be a sales call because quite honestly, I get paid no matter if anybody buys anything or not. So that's the luxury of being an advisor. They pay me for my advice. And that's what I'm doing. So what I would like to do, though, is turn it over to Brian Peters, who is not the person that met with me, but he's a person at Care Solace that knows much more about, obviously, how Care Solace works. And maybe Brian can present a little bit, maybe too, on the fallacy that we think there's not enough counselors out there, and that's why there's such a long wait time to get students the help that they need. So,
Yeah.
Brian.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. So Care Solace is the largest and still fastest growing K-12 mental health conduit in the United States of America. We support over 15 million families. And as Mark said, we are now in over 36 states in the country. There is that belief that really there aren't enough providers. Trent, can I
Yep,
have access to screen sharing?
betcha.
There we go. There is the belief by many that the root cause of mental health in America is lack of access, and that the lack of access has more to do with more demand than there is supply. That is certainly the case in some areas, right? There are just not enough providers to meet the demand that we have, especially post-pandemic. And the more and more I've kind of looked into this, I had written an award-winning book called The Metis Principle, Recognizing, Understanding, and Managing Fear. I've had a chance to present all over the country following the reopening of schools post-pandemic. And what I have found to be the case is that the lack of access is not always caused by not enough providers, but more so that there are so many barriers and so many obstacles to being able to access care that it's just almost impossible for many families to be able to get the care that they need. And so I like to start with a statistic because I think it's pretty eye-opening and it resonates with a lot of districts that face these challenges every day. So for every 100 families in the country that are identified by their school district as needing wraparound community-based services, the reality is that only 18 out of every 100 families actually follow through and get the care that they need and are seen by a provider in their community. And since that time, many companies have turned to teletherapy and virtual options because they have that belief too that there aren't enough providers locally to be able to meet that demand, and that one of the options that they can do is sign with a company that has a lot of teletherapists or can do things virtually. And that certainly is something that districts have been doing a lot of these days. But the reality is the lack of access, like I mentioned, is more about the barriers than it is about the number of providers in a particular geographic location. And so some of those barriers are obviously insurance barriers, right? So about 38% of the country right now that we're seeing is accessing support on Medicaid, Medicare, or some form of public insurance. A good portion are privately insured, but we do know that a large number, and it's between 15 and 20%, are considered underinsured. And so by the time that these families are identified by the school district and they're given a list of resources, they're calling their insurance company, they're trying to figure out who's covered in their network. So that there's that process that can take an awfully long time, especially if you don't know how to effectively navigate that process. School districts oftentimes will provide maybe a handful of providers in a particular area that they work with or that they feel comfortable recommending to families. When there are obviously a lot more providers in a particular area, but it's just not realistic for the district to be able to vet dozens or even in some cases hundreds of providers, and in really large urban areas, even thousands of providers to be able to figure out that comprehensive list for families. And then having the ability to kind of screen through and weed through who takes Medicare, Medicaid, what type of insurances are covered by each provider can be really challenging. Another reality is that for many families, transportation is a barrier. And that is either they might only have one car in the family and that parent works during the day, or maybe it's a single family home and they don't really have access to reliable transportation. And so looking at your geographic location, how far you're able to travel, some of those limitations that each family has is a barrier. And then for families, there's language barriers. There is social stigma. You have to navigate racial, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender preferences when it comes to seeing a provider, or else families aren't going to feel comfortable meeting with the person that is in front of them. And then we're seeing more and more, we see families who actually have challenges reading and writing. So trying to go through and sifting through information on their own or independently when reading and writing is a significant barrier or challenge for them can also shut families out, especially families that might be in communities or areas that have other extenuating circumstances. So all these different types of things were identified by our founder, Chad Castrita, and our company Care Solace was created to help families overcome these barriers and to be a helping hand and an ally, helping families get the help and support that they need. And the way that we do this is we work with families through our school district partners. So, for example, you at a school district, student services staff typically will identify a family, talk with parents, and say, hey, as a district, we've done everything we reasonably can to provide service and support to your son or daughter. And we do believe that there's probably more that could be done. We just don't have the capacity to do it internally. I'd like to connect you with the company we work with called Care Solace, who can help find a number of different options in the area for your family and see if any of them are a good fit for you. Now, keep in mind, only about 47% of all those needs that families have that go beyond what a school system can handle are for individual therapy. A lot of other things are drug and alcohol counseling, intensive outpatient, residential therapy, partial hospitalization, all these different things, psychiatry services, all these different things that a district really isn't equipped to be able to handle with their resources and with the staff that they have. So 53% of all the referrals that we actually get outside of school district are for something other than individual therapy. And so when a district is connected with us, the district will have access to this dashboard, and they'll be able to engage in what is called a warm handoff. And that warm handoff takes about 30 to 60 seconds to complete. It's pretty simple. What we are looking for is the child's first and last name, the parent or guardian's first and last name, a good phone number to reach them at, possibly an email address if they want to do asynchronous communication with us. We want to know their preferred language, and then a very short HIPAA and FERPA compliance statement about what the family is going through. So maybe it's student is struggling with depression or anxiety, or student is not feeling themselves because of X, Y, or Z reason. We just want to be able to have a warm and empathetic handoff when we actually connect with the family to have some reasonable idea of what the family is actually going to be needing support for. And when that warm handoff is completed, what it creates is a case ID. And that case ID appears in the dashboard in the form of like an ID card. So at a glance, every time we refresh this, you get updates and information on whether or not the family is contacted by Care Solace, whether or not we've matched them with providers, whether or not it's pending an appointment and they've been appointed to see somebody, and whether or not they've actually been appointed into care and they're seeing a provider at this time. And this is at a glance, so a snapshot just to be able to keep track of where things are with each family, making sure that they don't fall through the cracks. And then if you need additional information, you can click on case details. And because accountability is another cornerstone of what we kind of operate on, we provide each family with a dedicated care companion, which is their single point of contact that helps the family navigate through the process. Internally, we speak over 200 languages. And so if a family is identified and they are Spanish speaking or Italian speaking or some other language other than English, we're going to connect them with a care companion that can speak with them and communicate with them in their preferred language. And then when we go through the matching process and find providers in your community, we're going to look for providers that can support the family also in their preferred language. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll be able to see case details, which is a running record of all the activity that has taken place with the family from the time that warm handoff has been created to the time that we complete an initial screener with them. And that screener is approximately 8 questions, in which we do ask questions about their insurance situation, their preferred language, any important information about the provider that they are looking to see, so that when we are going through the search process, we can try to find providers that meet their preferences. And then when we identify preferences, we're looking for as few as 2 and as many as 5 providers that we can present to the families, because we do know that with families, when they are assigned something or something is being done to them, it doesn't feel comfortable. But when we provide families with the opportunity to have voice and choice and make an informed decision about their care and what's in their best interest, they are definitely more receptive to the process. And our goal with this matching process is to ideally find possible matches to present to the family within 72 hours. And from that process, from the time we start the conversation with the family to the time they are actually seen by a provider, the average in the Midwest is about 2 weeks and 3 days. So with the national average being about 16 weeks to see a provider and to get an appointment, cutting it down to under 3 weeks is actually pretty remarkable if you think about it. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is because we cast a very wide net over a particular area. We look at all possible providers in an area, and we vet them quarterly to make sure that their license is in good standing, that there's no disciplinary action against that provider. And then from a legal standpoint, we look to make sure that there's no lawsuits or anything like that that are pending or open against that provider. Because what we ultimately want to do is we want to make sure that we're providing families with resources and with providers that are quality providers. So that's kind of a quality control measure that we do internally to be able to ensure that the people that we are recommending are, at least on its surface, are quality providers. And then we do over time, our system kind of leverages an artificial intelligence component, which it's constantly learning and assessing which providers in the area are the most receptive to taking families in a short period of time. The overall quality of those providers from a subjective point of view, how a family's responded as far as the appointments that they've had and the providers that they've seen, what has been their feedback about those providers. So we're constantly learning with each geographic area that we do business in, what are the providers that are providers that we should reach out to at least earlier to be able to see if they are available for families should they need an appointment. Does that make sense so far?
Brian,
Yep.
Why don't you talk about situations where districts maybe have MOUs with private therapy companies and they don't want to destroy that relationship they have with that therapy company?
That's an outstanding point. So most districts will have an MOU provider. Sometimes it's 2 or 3, but usually we don't see many more than 3, even with some of our really large districts. Our belief is that we don't want to upset the apple cart or interfere with anything in your district that is going really well. We want to be a value-added service, and we want to be able to take on the responsibility where you're seeing shortcomings or you're not necessarily seeing families get the help that they need. So what we do is, if you do have a provider, let's call it Schneider Therapy. You work with Schneider Therapy, you're extremely happy with those services, but you do realize that there are probably more families in the community that need help than what Schneider is able to take on at any given time. But you still don't want Schneider to feel like you're going around him or his clinic. You'd rather be very transparent about the situation. So what we do is we ask for right of first refusal, right of second refusal. And so when we sign on with a district that already has those established partnerships, we enter that information in our database. So when we have a family that is turned over to Care Solace, we get that warm handoff. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to call the representatives at Schneider, and we're going to say, hey, we have a situation with a 13-year-old female who's experiencing anxiety and depression. They're looking to see a provider as soon as possible. Are you able to see them within the next 2 to 3 weeks? What's your availability? What openings do you have? And if we hear, you know what, we would love to be able to help you out, but the next available appointment we have is not until May 15th. We're going to take that information into consideration. And then we are also, if you have a second provider that you'd like us to contact, we'll call them next. Let's say you have 3, we call all 3. and the first available appointment isn't until May, what we're going to do is we are going to then look at our database. We're going to enter in all the information. We're going to look at providers that are in the area that meet that family's that criteria, what they're looking for, and the services that they're looking to receive. And then we're going to see if there's anybody that can meet with them sooner than that May appointment. And we will present those options to the family. So essentially, we might find 2 or 3 other providers that might be able to see that family within that 3-week window that we shoot for. We will provide this information to the family and say, hey, these are the partners that the district works with. We have a couple other partners that we also found. The appointments are such and such a dates. Here's an overview of each one of the providers, their backgrounds, their credentials, any personal information as far as is it a Hispanic therapist? Is it a African-American therapist? Is it a Caucasian therapist? Do they speak a language that the family is looking for? So we'll present all that information so that the family has all of those kind of things to consider. And then if they see one that's a good fit for them, we will help book them into care and get them an appointment with that provider. And then within 24 hours of that appointment, we're going to call the family back to confirm enrollment to make sure that they actually went to the provider. And we're going to ask them, was it a good fit for their family? Is there anything we should know about that provider that might be helpful to other people looking to possibly book appointments with this provider? And then if they want help booking future appointments, we'll look for available openings and try to get them booked into future care as well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a question I often get is, what about families who do not want the district knowing about their mental health journey, which is a very reasonable thing, right? So nationally, about 38% of families do not want to go through the district when it comes to finding access to support. They want it to be anonymous. They want it to be confidential. And so what districts will do is on their website, they will provide a anonymous pathway. And this tells families this is anonymous, it's confidential. They can search it on their own. They can call Care Solace, and we can do as much or as little of the lift to help families access care. Now, like I said, nationally, 38% of families are accessing the pathway anonymously. We do see a much smaller percentage accessing anonymously in the Midwest. Could be Midwestern values, could be smaller school districts. We have closer relationships with our families and with our parents. We might have situations where families feel more comfortable working with through their district to find help. But for families that do not want to go that pathway, we do have an anonymous option. And what that essentially does is that funnels up to a dashboard that has KPIs that look at number of inbound interactions, communications saved, number of warm handoffs, family initiated cases, appointments into care, and this portion down here, anonymous searches. So for families that go through this, you're not going to have it appear on the dashboard for case management. All you're going to see is the number of anonymous searches that went through. And then if we do have information in here, it'll also plug in, but it won't give families identifiable information. So it won't say that Trent Grunmeyer is seeing a provider. I won't give any of that information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's very user-friendly, and
Yep.
I can see where that's a question. If you don't mind, for time's sake, Brian, I'm sure there'll be more questions, but that's very insightful. Do you mind if we can turn it over to Brian Stone now and talk a little bit about where things are at in his district a couple months down the road now?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thanks, Trent. So a little bit about it. I think the thing that when Mark initially approached me about this, and it was hard to believe it was true, was the how simple it was to get this in place. We pushed this out prior to Christmas break. And the other piece that I found amazing, as you just displayed that last document, I just recently got ours, and it is that simple, and it is that simple to read and to evaluate what's on there. We had, as soon as we pushed this out to our community, we had a warm handoff happen from someone, another, our virtual administrator had somebody he was working with. I mean, it really was that simple. And it's hard to believe that something complex as what you're reading is really that simple to implement. And, our counselors, have, it's been very beneficial for them in a wide variety of ways. And actually, I think, Trent, if you can maybe run that, I actually asked them to do a little video. They were a little apprehensive to do it, but then as soon as they got in front of the microphone, they all spoke for about 6 minutes apiece. And I'm like, no, I got to cut this down a little bit. But I think they give you a better realistic feel for what it provides. And I'll say this, as I approach the board about this and we move in that direction, if this helps one kid, let alone an adult, it just is that big. It was that beneficial. So thank you, Trent. Go ahead. Uh-oh.
Hi, my name is Kelly Tyler.
Can you see it and hear it okay?
Yep.
And I'm the school counselor at West Elementary. I serve pre-K, K, and 3rd and 4th grade. I've used Care Solace one time since we have began the program, and it was very smooth as far as I contacted the parent to see if they were okay with me giving their information to the company and referring them. And then the company, Care Solace, reached out to them and took everything from that point forward.
Hi, my name is Tracy Rush, and I am the school counselor at Mid-Prairie Middle School. Care Solace has been a huge help in connecting our families with community-based, therapy services. It has really taken a burden off of families as the Care Solace representatives really do the work in reaching out, finding out which therapists are available, who has openings, making sure that it matches, their students' needs, the insurance they have. And so it really takes the work off the family.
Hi, my name is Laura Schmidt. I'm one of the high school counselors at Mid-Prairie High School with Melissa Rediger. A few favorite things that we love about Care Solace. So first off, Melissa and I talk about a lot their consistent efforts to reach out to families and students that we refer and ones that reach out to them. So a really nice feature on our end for students that we refer in the building, we can see those efforts being made by Care Solace, whether it's they're texting our student or family, whether they're phone calling their parent, emailing, how many times have they reached out to providers and services in the area. We can see those numbers, see what time, what day. It's super nice to know that they are consistently doing that and they have the time and efforts to do that. It's just really nice to know. As counselors, we can often get caught up in what can we do at school? Are we spending enough of our time? But Care Solace also provides that outside time where we are not able to dedicate all of those efforts. So it's nice to know that someone's there for that.
Go on to the website. I had to log in and see where they were in the process of contacting family and setting up appointments or finding providers. So that was really helpful to see, and I could check on it at any time. And there was a log. There was also a log of my conversation and my information that I gave to Care Solace about the family and about the child, which was really helpful to look back and make sure that I had included everything that I needed to share with them about the situation.
Not only has it been a huge help for the family, but it's also been a huge help for us as an at-risk team. The time that I would normally be spending, reaching out to therapists, communicating with families, kind of the back and forth, is now being spent, meeting directly with students, assisting staff members in the building. And so it's really just taken a lot of that time commitment away from families, away from us as an at-risk team, and just really helped connect the students in need to a therapist or a counselor. I have referred about 6 students in my building, and the process has been extremely seamless. Not only have I seen, every student get paired with a therapist, but also it has really sped up the process. Unfortunately, with the shortage of therapists in our area, there oftentimes is, a 6 to 10 month wait time. And I have really seen with Care Solace thus far, they have really sped up the process and ensured that our students are seen in a more timely manner. For example, I had a 12-year-old student who was, in dire need of some additional resources. And initially when Care Solace joined the conversation, we were looking at a wait time of April or May. And thankfully, once Care Solace got involved, we were able to speed up the process, and that student was able to be seen within 2 weeks. And so it has just been a huge resource, something I hope continues to grow and be used, as more families find out about it and we're able to spread that information to others.
Second, a really nice tool we like to use as counselors is the resource page available. So that resource page talks about a lot of different mental health topics, but it's got templates to use for emails we can send out to students and staff for awareness. For example, March is Self-Harm Awareness Month. And so we can go in there, there's a template setting out information on self-harm. So they already have those emails drafted for us. We can insert any personal information we want in there. And another thing is like webinars. So they hold local webinars that we can log on to for Zoom and 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Super nice. We can do it from our office. Melissa and I can chat about it. Again, a lot of various topics that can be discussed on there. So those are just a couple of the features that we really like.
Better stop there. Loud on a Friday afternoon, keeping everybody awake. But good stuff. And thank you, Brian, for getting some testimonials from your staff, firsthand in their initial implementation here. Great to hear. And what I caught my attention in particular is how quickly folks can get services. I know that's a barrier often, and there's so many things that muddy that or slow that down. So that's one thing I've heard firsthand. That's awesome. Certainly stay on for discussions here. I'm going to close this and thank you again, Brian, Mark, for being on today.
Do you mind if I point out 2 more things real quick? It'll take about a minute or so.
Yeah, go ahead.
So most staff will say, student services staff, counselors, social workers, school psychologists, when they do a review, annual review, we save them on average about 3.5 hours per week in administrative and follow-up tasks. And then we put that obviously in the dashboard so they know that all those families are still being served without getting the phone calls directly or having to intervene directly on the family's behalf. We also support families 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And about a third of all of our intake calls and work we do with families are between 5:30 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. Monday through Friday or on weekends. And so I always say you don't have to take my word for it. You can contact basically any district in the country that uses Care Solace. These are some testimonials from the Midwest. We have them up all over the place. We love hearing from our district partners. We love hearing the success that they're having. We are going to continue to do our level best to make sure that every student, every family, and every staff member that needs timely access to mental health services gets the support that they need. That's our mission. That's who we are. It's what we do. And now that we are fully launched and available in the state of Iowa, we would love nothing more than to help as many families across the state of Iowa as we possibly can. So share early, share often, and tell people about it because help is on the way. Thanks, Trent.
No, that's great. And thank you. You're doing good work. And I know it's not in Iowa that much right now, but we all have the challenges. Matter of fact, not to get emotional on a Friday afternoon, but a good friend of mine's had a nephew that passed away, actually committed suicide and was on the waiting list and had not got in for services. And just makes me wonder, if he would have got the support he needed, would he still be around? We all have those stories. So a timely and meaningful topic. So thank you all for that. And again, just want to respect everybody's time getting you the content, but we will follow up with this video on our YouTube channel, any other resources that are available and to further explore Care Solace or other services like this. And just a quick note, we try to hit timely topics like this one every month to support and network our GLS hires and others. So our next one is on April 7th around recruiting and retention of staff, from support staff to teachers to administrators. So hope you can join us on April 7th, and thanks for being here today with us.